Welcome back. Chapter 20. Paula. Alone at the bank of computers, Paula read the article again, slowly this time. It didn't help. Phrases and words jumped out at her. Bruises on his face, fingerprint marks, airways blocked. And with every paragraph, she found her eyes wandering back to the photo. She zoomed in, but it only served to make the image blurrier. She zoomed out again, looked at it in its normal composition. The woman the police was hunting was Anna. She was sure of it. The beret, the tailored coat, the stance of the figure in the picture. Caution pricked at her, and you better be cautious. These were not unusual items. The clothing was not enough to pin it on her. The hat might have hidden her hair, but it was likely to be short just like Anna's was. If the woman in the picture had long hair, surely there would be some strands hanging down, unless she pushed her full head of hair underneath the beret. There was something else, something confusing. A kind of recognition or knowledge of this woman. Not that it was Anna, but someone else. Someone or something that tugged at Paula's memory. Could it be Rebecca? Or is Paula really Rebecca? Her mind went blank, and she frowned as she clicked off the website. She checked her watch and saw that it was late. The lounge had been deserted since the sudden flurry of people racing for the deck. She shivered at the knowledge that she was totally alone down there. Grabbing her key card, she hurried back toward the stairs. Anna. It was after midnight, and Anna hauled herself to her feet and dressed. She felt like a sitting duck here, a criminal just waiting for the officer to come and arrest her. In a few hours, they would dock in. Was that what they were waiting for? For the passengers to disembark so there wouldn't be a scene on the luxury liner when they handcuffed her? She pulled her padded winter coat out of the wardrobe and slipped it on. Gloves, hat, not the pink beret, but a black knitted one, and carefully opened the door. The corridor was silent, the main lights out. Just a soft white glow of the bulb lined the hallway. As she strode towards the elevator, she heard the distinctive noise that signaled it arrived. She flattened herself against the wall, looked right, looked left, nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Was it Officer Patrick Dwayne coming back for her, armed with evidence of her crime? She pushed herself off the wall and stood straight as the elevator door swished open and a man strolled out. Tommy. She smiled with relief. He looked at her and his face lit up. Hi, she said cautiously in case Paula was in the lift. Anna, where are you going at this time of night? He said. He was slurring a little, but not too much, just drunk enough, she thought. Thought I'd take a walk and see if the northern lights are on display, she replied, unless you want to join me for a drink in my suite. His eyes darted to the closed door of the expedition suite, and she caught his thought. Paula was in there, sleeping or most likely unable to sleep, waiting for the return of her wandering husband. Shall we go up on deck? She said softly. He nodded, reached back, and pressed a button for the lift. The scratching noise came from one of the nearby rooms, the sound of a safety chain being released. Anna slipped past Tommy, brushing his side as she walked smartly into the lift. With one last glance down the hallway, he followed her inside. He was all over her as soon as the lift doors closed, hands grabbing roughly at her shoulders, hips, waist. He was drunker than she thought, she acknowledged, as he shoved her hard against the mirrored wall. She caught sight of her reflection, her cheeks flushed, hat askin, and she seemed so small in comparison to his big frame. She liked that, the sensation of being tiny, helpless, in need of a man like Tommy. It wasn't true. She never needed protecting in the physical sense, but it felt good to fool him. The elevator jutted to a halt. Tommy pulled away from her, stabbed at the buttons, no doubt to keep the lift where it was so he can carry on pointing at her. But the doors opened and Anna ducked under his arm and out onto the deck. He stared at her, confused, before staggering out to join her. She walked the length of the ship in the freezing night air, a few feet ahead of him, glancing back every so often to see if he was still following her. She paused, looking up as a streak of white light raced across the sky, arching over her head. A trail from the Leonis. As the shooting star blazed and faded where the sky met the sea, she recalled the notification that had pinged through on the app tonight. Behind her, Tommy's heavy treaded sound announcing his approach, and she turned to watch him. The bitter air seemed to sober him rapidly, leaving him blinking at her, his hand scratching his face as if he couldn't understand how he had come to be out here. "I think you're really something," he said, catching her up. He stood a few feet away, no longer buoyed by the shield of booze. He didn't look cautious or shy. He looked like he had done this 1,000 times before, and he had. Like a fish, he was hooked. She grinned and shimmied her way over to him. She had to play it carefully now. She mustn't just hand it all over so he was sated. He needed to be left wanting more. He had to desire her in a way that was more than just a quick fumble. She lowered her face coyly, buying time as she considered her next steps. They would get off the ship tomorrow in Iceland, and she still had things to think about apart from Tommy. Paula, for one, and Patrick Dwayne, the officer who had questioned her about Mark. Remembering the officer and his attitude towards her, she turned to the rail and climbed up, leaning over, scanning the ship for any sign of CCTV cameras. Because if Patrick came at her, that would be all he had apart from his suspicion, and if there was no security on the external parts of the ships, she was free and clear. "You need to be careful," said Tommy, alarmed. His arms circled her upper body, and with ease he plucked her off the railing and set her down. "I'm just enjoying the view," she said calmly, but her insides churned with anger at his macho heroics. Then, behind him, it happened. The sky on the horizon changed, a gradual lightening above. It was like a sunrise, but the wrong color. It burned emerald green, a glow that shimmered in the far distance, seemingly alive as it stretched upwards and outwards. It was growing, she saw, and even before it had really begun, she knew it was going to be a spectacular show. She gripped Tommy's arm, pushing at him so he turned around. His breath caught in his throat as steadily the northern lights crawled towards them. Granford and slate now, with piercing vibration of fuchsia, and the whole thing suddenly pulsated, shooting across the previous black night sky. In spite of the promise of the lights, that wasn't why Anna had come on this cruise. This was a business trip, another episode in a long line of getting to where she needed to be. But at the moment, when the lights burst across the atmosphere, everything she had fought and killed for fell away. Beneath her coat and between her thin ribs, she felt her heart hammering in her chest. It was awe, but mixed with fear, she acknowledged, because this show was out of this world, and just like in the elevator with Tommy, she was suddenly tiny and insignificant. "Oh, yes," Tommy hissed the words from between clenched teeth. "Yes." She wanted to tell him to shut up, not to spoil it with speech, but as she glanced at him, something else overwhelmed her. He was like a child, she realized, and it didn't annoy or irritate her as she thought. It was actually quite endearing. Really ill. Another unfamiliar emotion. She breathed in deeply, flickering her head from left to right and upwards over to the horizon, determined to see it all, not to miss a single moment. The door opened and there were footsteps and excited chatter as more passengers flooded out. One of them could be Paula. It was a half thought, not important, and a glance at Tommy's face told her he felt the same. What? I'm not surprised. The guests streamed past them, exclamation of delights in their wake. Anna tilted her head back and stared and stared. She closed her eyes for a moment, and in the darkness, she was delighted to find that the northern lights were imprinted inside her lids. A hand brushed hers. Tommy. She let him take her fingers in his own and tone out everyone else on the deck. As they stood together, the freezing cold was no longer a factor. She was warm, she realized, inside and out, and everything else slipped away. The officer who was suspicious of her, Mark, for whom his colleagues were still searching, her photo in the paper, wanted in connection with William's death, and Paula. For however long this went on, none of it mattered. She smiled. As though the lights were a message just for her, she suddenly knew exactly how she was going to handle Paula. She really letting her guard down, isn't she? Paula. Paula's plan had been to sit up and wait for Tommy to return. Regardless of what he had or hadn't done with Anna, she always felt safe with him. And knowing or suspecting that there was a killer next door was something that filled her with fear and dread. She needed him here in the suite, even if he wasn't speaking to her. Just the bulk of him would do. And she didn't want to go looking for him. He would return to the room when he was done drinking with his buddies. Still in her coat and boots, she sat primly on the chair by the window. To pass the time, she pulled back the curtains and looked at the stars. It was a clear night, and maybe the northern lights would put in an appearance. Letting the curtain fall, she rested her head against the back of the chair, allowed herself to close her eyes, just for a minute, because she needed to stay alert and on guard. The click of the door awoke her, sounding like a gunshot in the silence of the cruise ship. Gasping, she sat up straight, spinning around in her chair, her eyes seeking something, anything to use against the intruder. She snatched up the fruit bowl and raised it above her head as she pushed herself to a standing position to see Tommy. He had his back to her as he held onto the door and removed his boots one by one. She put the fruit bowl back on the table before he could see it. "You're awake?" he said as he turned around and took off his coat. "Did you see them?" She glanced at her watch and saw that it was almost 5 a.m. "Did I see who?" she asked. He grinned, and it took her aback. The years seemed to have fallen away from him. She hadn't seen him looking this way for a long time. "The northern lights," he exclaimed. He moved fast, covering the suite in a few strides, and threw back the curtains. She stepped up beside him and peered out. The sky was dark, but the stars were bright. No lights. "I didn't see them," she said. She felt oddly disappointed. Girl, you about to be more disappointed when you find out he saw it with Anna. "Oh, Paula, they were amazing," he breathed. "The colors. They started on the horizon and then they were everywhere. They filled the whole sky." She sat back down in the chair. "Who were you out there with?" He was facing away from her, still gazing outside as though the lights were going to appear again at any minute. His back stiffened. "The lads," he said. "Dermot and Agnes and a few of others were there." He threw her a look and she saw she had ruined his high. She hadn't even mentioned Anna's name, but he knew that was what she really was asking. He went back across the suite and stopped to pick up his coat from the floor. Paula's breathing quickened. He had just got back, and he couldn't leave her again. Not alone, not in this suite, not with her next door. "Where are you going?" she asked. And then, in case he thought she was nagging, "Can I come with you?" He shrugged, and she took this as a yes as she pulled on her boots and grabbed her jacket from the peg. He was still in the mood, she saw, and he had been intending on going wherever he was headed alone. To see her? She shivered in spite of the warmth of the cabin and followed him to the door. Soon they would be in Iceland. Soon she would have some sort of idea on how to go about reporting her suspicions about Anna to someone in authority. And the sooner Anna was taken away, the sooner she would have Tommy back where he belonged. Until then, she would stick by his side. Oh, okay. That's the end of chapter 20. So that's the reason why you behaving the way you behaving with Tommy. He is really getting on my nerve, and she is really getting on my nerve. The passive, maybe she got a plan. I'm going to continue. Chapter 21. They walked around the upper deck twice, Tommy forging ahead, Paula a good 2 steps behind. In her haste to follow her husband, she had forgotten her gloves, and she shoved her hands deep in her pockets. No sign of the storm yet, she called to him once the silence had gone on for too long. Tommy stopped at the bow of the ship and leaned on the railing. She caught up with him and watched as he scanned the skies, his eyes glittering dark in the moonlight. "It's coming," he said. She laughed and moved up to stand beside him. "Can you smell it?" she asked. He looked up and breathed in deeply. With an exaggerated glance at her, he nodded. "I think I can." Then he laughed too, and it was like a light being flipped. His mood had turned. She leaned into him and hooked her arms through his. "What shall we do when we dock?" she asked as they began to walk again. He looked down at her. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. What are the options?" She half listened as he reeled off the various excursions and what Dermot and Angus had suggested, with them having been here before. She knew how it would go anyway. This was how they worked. He appeared to offer her some suggestions, and she knew well enough that the first thing he mentioned were what he was keen to do. Then, when asked for her opinion, she would obediently go with what he wanted. She slowed her step as she thought about it. This habit of their marriage. Julia's words spun in her head. "Don't lose yourself." But she wasn't, was she? Yeah. Surely she was just putting her husband first like a good wife should. And why? But when do you get to be put first? The thought popped in her head, unbidden. Uncomfortably, she pushed it away. She fixed a smile on her face as Tommy talked on. She should be happy. She should be relieved. Her husband was back. And all that with Anna, what she had seen in the casino, Anna was a slut, and Tommy had been drunk. But after this holiday was over, they would never have to see the wretched woman again. All Paula had to do was keep a close eye on Tommy, make sure she stayed close to him so he wouldn't be tempted. After all, he was only human. But what about the other stuff? The old man who had died. No, not died, been killed. And the photo that looked so very much like Anna. But the same thought came back to her, that after this trip, they would never have to clap eyes on her again. She nodded to herself and pulled Tommy closer. "Shall we get some breakfast?" she said. Anna. In her cabin, Anna pulled Mark's phone out of her bag and switched it on. "Now, why'd you do something like that, Anna?" The battery was still half full, and on the lock screen a zigzagging pattern was visible, a greasy fingerprint track. She followed it with her own finger, allowing herself a smile as the phone unlocked. Sipping a glass of water, she scrolled through his texts. There was a string of them between himself and Patrick. The officer was in Mark's address book as Pat D. There was something friendly or sociable, she noted, just work instructions, rotas, destinations, and times of departure. She read through his previous message, studying the tone he used, abbreviations, numbers used as words, which she personally hated. And when she was sure she had the inflection right, She typed out a text to Patrick. So sorry for leaving you in a lurch. I had to leave the ship for personal reasons. Sorry again. Pat. Will call when I can. She read through it and pressed the send key before she could change her mind. She was about to switch the phone off and put it away when she had another thought. She put her own name in his phone and typed out another text. Annie, thank you for being a great friend. Can't go home yet, but we'll text soon. She sent it through, waiting until her own phone beeped before turning his off and pushing it deep into the bottom of her bag. When she got off the ship in Iceland, she would dump the phone along with everything else incriminating. It would be all gone, buried in the snow, and none of it could ever be traced back to her. Feeling better, she stood up and went in search for First Officer Patrick Dwayne. Girl, you don't know. They can put two and two together. Like the text came in the same time in the same room. I'm just saying. She moved through the restaurant, recoiling at the stench of the buffet. The grease, the bacon, the eggs. It was like being back at William's house. In contrast to her disgust, her stomach growled noisily, betraying her. Across the room, she saw him, Tommy, alone with just a mug of coffee for company. She slowed down, smiling now, and considered diverting over to him. Last night, or rather in the early hours of this morning, when the light show had finished, they had waited until the crowd had drifted away from the upper deck before parting ways. See you tomorrow? He had asked hopefully, looking boyish and love-struck. She had softened her eyes as she gazed at him, fully in character, and nodded. Well, now it was tomorrow, and he was clearly alone. She thought of Paula in her suite, no doubt bouncing from teary and an emotional to furious and hurt. She took a step forward. Behind her, someone swished past, murmured, "Excuse me," and obediently on reflex, Anna stepped out of the way. A waft of fried food trailed in the person's wake, and she breathed in sharply as the woman wove through the tables towards Tommy. Paula. She watched as Paula put a plate down in front of Tommy. He grinned up at his wife. In response, she plucked a piece of bacon from his plate. He snatched it back, laughing now, and she gave up the mock fight, sitting down next to him so close their sides were touching. What the fuck? Anna knew her eyes were blazing, her stance stiff like ice. She turned and fled before they could look up and see her, knowing that the ferocity showed in her face, her nails biting the skin of her palms as she hurried as fast as she could away from the restaurant. I know that's right. Oh boy. Officer Patrick. She spotted him on the bottom deck, tall and authoritative in his heavy woolen coat, the golden insignia on his sleeve gleaming in the weak sunshine. He stood slightly in order to hear what the passenger he was chatting to were saying. The wind had picked up, she noted. The promised storm was coming, and Patrick hadn't heard her as he bade goodbye to the couple and walked on. Patrick! She broke into a run, her breathing labored as she charged on down the deck. He heard her now, and she knew that from the single moment of hesitation in his stride, but he kept on going anyway. She swore quietly, a stream of profanities, before realizing it was making it even more difficult to run. She clapped her mouth closed, put her head down, and thundered after him. Patrick! She caught at his sleeve, panting, sweat running freely down her face, despite the harsh wind that whipped around them. He looked down at her, eyes penetrating, and she shivered. This man was so very different to all the others she had encountered. William, Tommy, Mark, a hint of bare flesh and a promise of what was to come, and they were putty in her hands. Not this one. Not First Officer Patrick Dwayne. I I got a text, she wheezed, pulling her phone out of her pocket and waving it at him. I got a text from Mark. He regarded her steadily, much like he had in her cabin the other night, but then his eyes had been distrustful, knowing, triumph. Now they seemed resigned. Ah, Mark, yes. I also got a text from him. She had ripped off a glove, holding it in her teeth as she stabbed at the phone buttons to bring up Mark's text message. At Patrick's words, she paused and looked up at him. Did you? What did he say to you? He jerked his head towards her phone, a silent instruction to show him the text. She obeyed, holding it up for him to see. He read it once and nodded. I suppose I'll have to wait until he's designed a text tell me when he's coming back to work, he said. Anna shrugged and kept her eyes on him. I'm sorry for any misunderstanding, she said. He didn't press her to elaborate, and for that, she was thankful. He had thought she was lying back there in the Arctic suite, and he had tricked her with a fake name for Mark's wife. But now it seemed Mark had made contact, and Patrick seemed more irritated that he was a crew member short. Her exasperation had overridden his skepticism. Anna smiled and lifted her hand in a wave as she walked slowly back the way she had come. Can't believe you, child. Paula. It's barely even light yet, said Paula as she stared out the floor-to-ceiling window in the restaurant. She turned to Tommy. What time is it? He glanced at his watch. Nearly 9. She faced the window again. Outside, the waves crashed against the hull of the boat and spat up a spray of frothy white water. Beyond the glass, the sky was a strange grayish brown. Daytime had arrived. The frights of the night were gone. But here in this bizarre land, it still seemed like twilight. They don't get many hours of daylight here, not at this time of year, said Tommy, as he edged his chair around to follow her gaze. The tannoy played its familiar soothing tune, and Paula sat up straight. Not long now, fellow travelers. We'll be docking in Scarfabaki. From here, you will have the day to explore whatever takes your fancy. The famous Blue Lagoon with its thermal pools, or if you're interested in Iceland Viking roots, you can visit the National Museum or the Settlement Exhibition. If you are attracted to the epic nature and landscape that this magical land has to offer, why not try a day trip to the mighty Gullfoss waterfall or the geothermal scenery near the Reykjanes Peninsula. Daylight fades quickly here, so please make sure you are back at the ship and on board in time. You know the rules. If you're late, the ship won't wait. The captain's cheery tone belied his warning, thought Paula, a heavy click that resounded around the ship, signaling that his announcement was over. Beneath them, the Ruby Spirit juddered and whirled. Tommy stood up and moved across to the window. We're docking, he cried. Paula abandoned her coffee and went over to join him. Despite the gloom, her heart lifted. Tommy was right. She could see boats and buildings and cranes, and beyond them, lush green grass that poked up through a thin covering of snow. Thank goodness, she murmured. As they moved slowly closer to civilization, she put a hand to her chest. She hadn't realized just how much she'd been suffering from cabin fever until she laid eyes on the land outside. She touched Tommy's shoulder. How long until we can get off? He tilted his head towards her, one eyebrow raised. Someone's eager. She nodded. The ship was claustrophobic, stifling, and she wanted nothing more than to be outside, where she could just walk and not end up on the same deck or in the same room she spent the last few days in. Shouldn't be long now. Look, The tugs are coming. She followed his finger to the tiny boats coming towards them in the V shape, 6 of them in all. They fanned out at the bow of the ship before vanishing from view. What are they for? She asked. Surely the passengers weren't expected to disembark onto those fragile-looking vessels. They'll pull the ship in, guide it to the dock. He looked down at her and let out a laugh, long and loud. Didn't you know that? If she knew that, she wouldn't have asked you. She shook her head, allowing him to lead her across the restaurant towards the elevator. He was still chuckling at her naivety when they reached it. She took a deep breath. Things really were back to normal between them. This woman. Apparently, she wasn't the only one eager to disembark. In the lobby near the boarding doors, people stood in clusters. There was a hum of excitement, chatter, and the rustle of maps, while phones lit up with routes and tour websites. Where are we going to go? Paula raised her voice to be heard above the dozen of other conversations. Tommy showed her his own phone, a photo of a lake with people in it, steam rising off the water. It's a thermal lake, naturally heated seawater. I haven't got my swimming costume, she said. He huffed out a sigh. You knew I wanted to go and see the lakes, he said. Hurry up and get it. Sorry, she said as she reached for the lanyard around her neck that held her key card. I'll be really quick. She ducked out of the crowd of people into the corridor just as the lift doors opened and another trickle as passengers came out. She drew in a sharp breath when Anna emerged. But Anna hadn't seen her, and Paula turned her head away. To her left was a restroom, and on a whim, she pushed open the door and slipped inside, unwilling, unable to walk past the woman and have to make eye contact with her. It had a porthole window, and she put her face up to it. The elevator crowd swept past, and Anna among them. The hallway was narrow, and their bodies pressed against the toilet door as they crammed their way through the large waiting area. She might have missed it, but in the silence of the restroom, there came a very definite click. She gasped in fury, knowing instantly what had happened and who had done it. She locked her in so Anna did see. The times before, in the sauna and in her suite, she had been frightened. Anger was a welcome change. About damn time, do something with that. She gripped the handle and pushed, knowing the door wouldn't budge, swearing anyway when she was proved right. She stood on tiptoes again, peering out of the porthole. Anna's blonde head bobbed through the throng of people, marking a trajectory towards Tommy. Oh no, you don't, hissed Paula. Not this time. She kicked the door, beat her hands against the glass. Toughened glass, she realized, and the noise of exciting chatter in the waiting area drowned out her cries and the sound of her fists. All eyes were fixed on the door that led out to Iceland. Nobody was even looking in her direction. She knew what would happen. Anna would tag on to Tommy's group. They would leave without her, and she would miss out, stuck, imprisoned again. How had it even happened? 1 minute, Anna had been exiting the elevator, and Paula had ducked into the loo, certain that the other woman hadn't even seen her. But she clearly had. Anna had it in for her and was ready at every single opportunity. But why? Tommy's fan club? Paula stopped hammering on the door for a moment and narrowed her eyes. It had happened before. If she were honest, it happened all the time. Silly, pretty things, pound signs in their eyes as they looked at the self-made success in front of them. But usually, a reminder that he was a married man was enough. A possessive hand on his arm, a glance that she had perfected did the trick. But not in this case. She returned her attention to the porthole. Down the hall, the elevator door was open again. A fresh wave of day trippers emerged. She waited until they drew level with the toilet door. Then she curled her hands into fists and banged hard as she could. A middle-aged woman in the crowd jerked her head towards the door. Paula's heart leaped. "I'm stuck," she shouted, pointing to the handle. "I'm locked in." The woman glanced over her shoulders as if to check whether Paula was talking to someone else. Paula slapped her hand to the glass. "Help," she mouthed. Realization dawned on the woman's eyes, and she held up a hand in a wait gesture. Paula pressed her face to the pothole, tracking her movements as she pushed her way to the front of the elevator group. "Yes," she whispered, as the woman located a staff member talking to him and pointing back in the direction of the restroom. The man followed her over and selected a key from the bunch on his belt. He inserted it in a lock that was too low for Paula to see, and immediately the door sprang open. Paula fell out into the hallway, profusely thanking both the stranger and the staff member. Then she darted off through the crowd, looking back only once. The woman had moved on, and the man was holding the toilet door open now, peering at the lock, testing the handle. She reached Tommy and opened her mouth to tell him her latest horror story. "Did you get your swimming costume?" he asked. Her swimming costume. That was where she'd been heading. She glanced around, trying to remain inconspicuous. There she was, Anna, moving towards the doors. Fear shot through Paula at the sight of her. All the anger of moments ago gone. Terror, real and raw, at the thought of what this tiny woman was capable of. She blinked, and in her mind's eye, she saw the body of a man Anna had been paid to care for, and the bruises on his face. "You know what? I'm fine staying on dry land," she said. Tommy glanced at her. "Well, I'm going into the water," he replied. "I'll watch." And watch she did, as Anna tracked a path across the lobby. She never had to say "excuse me," Paula noticed. The crowd seemed to part for her. As if sensing she was being scrutinized, Anna glanced over. Their eyes met, and Paula's heart thumped in her chest. Unconsciously, she edged closer to Tommy as the other woman's eyes burned into her own. Anna smirked, hoisted her backpack off, and set it to rest on the floor. Paula looked away. "Mate, good to see you." "Hi, Paula." Angus, Tommy's pal, bounced up to them, Dermot hot on his heels. Hands were shaking all around, and Paula tried to focus on the men's conversation. "Did you see the lights last night?" Dermot asked. Paula turned her attention to him. "No, sadly I missed." Her words trickled to a stop as she realized Dermot wasn't speaking to her, but to Tommy. She blinked. Hadn't Tommy said he had watched the Northern Lights with Dermot and Angus? Oh! "Yeah, I managed to catch them," Tommy said weakly, his eyes sliding sideways away from his wife. A few feet away, Anna smiled serenely, showing small white teeth. Paula put her hand over her mouth at the same time as Tommy darted a look at her, a warning glance. His hands reached out, his eyes narrowed, a signal not to cause a scene, to let it go. At that moment, the doors swished open and the crowd surged. She joisted her arm free from his grip and let herself be taken, shoved and pushed towards the door. Tommy's face was flushed, his eyebrows knitted, his temper, no doubt at being caught out, was rising. Behind him, Anna had disappeared from Paula's view. Paula turned around and let the mob sweep her out of the door and down the walkway onto Iceland soil, alone. How the heck is he mad? He lied and got caught out there. There was an expression in Paula's eyes that Anna hadn't known the other woman could pull off, if looks could kill. She was tempted to laugh in Paula's face to push her over the edge, but she held back. Crazy, no crazy. She couldn't be seen to be needling the woman, not if she wanted to get her hands on the final prize. Instead, she ducked down out of sight, pretending to fiddle with the zipper on her backpack. When she stood up, she saw the back of Paula's head, a black hat, and among all the others making their way off the cruise ship. Keeping enough people in between them, Anna put her own head down and blended into the middle of the crowd. Tommy emerged minutes later, stationed in between Dermot and Angus. They were too far away for her to hear what he was saying, but she could give it a good guess. He gestured angrily with his hands while his pals nodded sympathetically. He wasn't going after his wife, she noticed. Instead, the three men swung left and headed for the coaches that lined the dockside. Without even glancing over his shoulder, Tommy climbed up into the first coach. Anna looked at the sign on the front, Blue Lagoon Spa. It was certainly the most popular option, she realized, as the majority of the passengers followed suit. Paula was still walking, moving with the serious hikers now, and Anna cocked her head in interest. She wasn't going to get on a coach then? Hanging back, Anna watched. There were perhaps a dozen people near Paula. All were dressed in appropriate outerwear and sturdy hiking boots, most with crampons attached. Some even sported goggles, and majority of them had walking poles. They were grouped around a particular man, the trek leader, clearly, who waved his pole in the air, issuing instructions. Anna watched the spike at the end of the hiking stick. Imagine filling Paula with a single blow and driving it through her neck. God damn. The group began to move, the man in front and Paula, woefully unprepared Paula, bringing up the rear. They were pros, Anna thought, smiling to herself. It wouldn't be long before Paula fell behind. She shivered with anticipation. Okay, that's the end of chapter 21. What do I have to say? Because I'm sick of Tommy. I'm sick of Paula. I'm ready for her to get mad and do something about it. And well, he's a narcissist because, they don't never think they do nothing wrong. And it's always somebody else's fault. Don't embarrass them, right? Whatever. So this damn Anna, she is a hot mess. And I don't think that Officer Patrick Dwayne believes her. And she don't, like most people, they don't be knowing how things work, because they're going to find out that the text to both Patrick and yourself from Mark's phone was in the same facility, same, area. And it went through at the same time, because she didn't give herself like 10 minutes to between texts. She sent them back to back. So she did. I think if they investigating, I think she done shot herself in the foot with that. So Paula didn't tell Tommy about what she found out about Anna. Thank you that she didn't. But all of this wanting to be with a man that don't want you is annoying as crap. Like, why is she catering to him? But anyhow, so is Anna gonna follow Paula or Tommy? And then I had another thought. I may be going way over with this. Is Paula Rebecca or is Anna Rebecca? Because they mention Rebecca for a reason in these stories, right? So, and then Paula says something about recognition. So if the story is Anna's, Is it a possibility that Paula, like I was saying, is Rebecca? Or is it the other way around? That's one thing I was thinking about. And then the next thing is, Tommy got anger issues, right? Could it be, and he say that Paula is crazy, could he possibly be the person that might kill one of them? We don't know. They just said the person was walking on the ice with them as they was trying to get out from under it. So we don't know. We shall find out. So here's the deal. We are on chapter 22. There's only 28 chapters in the book. So that means we have 6 chapters left to go to find out, right? Did I say 26? No, it's 28 chapters, 28 chapters. So with that being said, I'm going to see y'all in the next book. I'm excited to find out what's going to happen. Did I say next book? Next chapter. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. See y'all in the next chapter. Bye for now.